Okay. This will be part 2. I know the last one was kind of long, but, there was a fair bit to cover before we could really move on. You may notice this is a slightly different project, but the end goal is still the same, so don't worry about it. I'm just going to quickly grab this stuff back. And I'll mention one thing real quick, and that's that I was never really a very quick typer, or typist, I don't know. But I wasn't really very quick at typing. Still not really. I also look at the keyboard when I type, so, sort of the hunt and peck thing, I'm just really, really fast at it. So don't let typing speed discourage you from programming, because, there's plenty of ways of getting around that. Plugins that autocomplete stuff, like Visual Assist X and other things. Visual Studio will do it too, you just gotta tell it to. But it's really not too big a deal for now. So this part is going to be about logic and loops, and we'll cover those well, right now. So let's see. Logic is where we're going to start, and then we can do loops after, I think. Yeah. Okay, logic is, well, logical. So an if statement. Yeah, it's pretty much that easy to do a if statement. Of course, you don't know what an if statement is yet. Okay, well, let's start with this. If true. If statements generally evaluate whatever's inside of them to a true or false value. For example, if true means it'll always happen, so don't do that unless, you have some weird reason to. But in general, just putting that in there is probably useless. Well, not completely useless, but in general, not very helpful as far as an if statement is concerned. However, we'll get to loops later, and then you'll see why that's possible. But for now, we can also do, let's do this real quick. Int num, I'm going to initialize it to 0, not that it matters, but just good programming practice, always initialize your variables, even if you don't have any idea what you're going to put into it or something. Initialize it to something and then just overwrite it. That way you at least know where you've started out, and, in case you don't set a value to it before you obtain the value back out of it, if you don't initialize and you use num without initializing it, it'll work, but you have no idea what the number is going to be. It'll be probably garbage or something. So, let's do, we all remember, cin, right? I'm gonna cin num, and then I'm gonna do an if statement on it. Let's see here. If num is greater than, notice that's just greater than 5. If num is greater than 5, cout num is greater than, I can't type, greater than 5. There's shortcuts to getting around this endline thing. I just do it because it looks nicer and neater to me, I think. Okay, so if the number you input is greater than 5, it'll input that. Else, you know what? Let's go over all the if statements real quick. We have if, obviously. So, oh wait, you might not be able to see this here. There, that might help you guys. Sorry, I forgot. So here we have if. You can also have if else. So let's do or else if. There we go. So another way of doing it would be this: else if num. You can put spaces. The compiler, which is what takes what you write here and turns it into a machine code, basically, it ignores spaces basically completely, except for putting a space in between these. That's kind of necessary, but as far as your logical stuff in here, it doesn't care. Same deal with this. I could put a space there or not. It doesn't matter. The compiler won't even yell at me or anything. Let's see. Okay, so if number is let's go over the other ways. Greater than or equal to 10. Then we output num is greater than or equal to 10. So there you go. That's relatively painless, yeah. Okay. And then we have, lastly, else, just your standard else. Now the way that this is gonna work as far as in code is, it'll go through this if statement, and if this evaluates to true, it will do this, and then it will skip everything else. Because these are all one sort of combined if-else statement thing. So if this is false, then it moves down. If this is false, then it moves down again. And it will do that until either one of them evaluates to true, or you hit else. For else, see out, I can't type again, and my mouse is in the way. See out, num is... Oh, yeah, that probably won't actually work. I'll tell you about that in a second. So num is greater than 5, and I'm gonna stop there so that you know where I screwed up if you haven't noticed already. Okay, follow the logic here. If the number is greater than 5, it'll output this. If the number is greater than or equal to 10, it'll output this. If it's greater than 5, it's obviously going to be greater than or equal to 10, and therefore this will never get hit. So, what do we do? Let's do, let's see, if number is less than, there we go, less than 5, or it could be greater than or equal to 10, number is less than 5, else if number is greater than 10, else the number is greater than 5 and less than, greater than or equal to 5 and less than 10. Okay, so there's basic sort of logical stuff that you can do things with. So if the number is less than 5, it'll output numbers less than 5, greater than or equal to 10, outputs that. So let's run this. It looks like it'll compile. Please compile. Okay, let's see what happens. And I did the same mistake I did last time. I forgot to tell myself to input a value. So let's hit, let's see, first one is less than 5, so let's go with 2, enter, number is less than 5. Hit enter again. Okay, I'm going to quickly add this up here so that that doesn't happen again. Please enter a number to evaluate. There we go. That should make things a little bit easier. And this little red squiggly here, I know last time I mentioned that red squiggly usually means you did something wrong. In this case, it is simply my spell check. So it'll still compile. It won't yell at me or anything about that. Please enter a number to evaluate. Let's try 10. Number is greater than or equal to 10. Okay. Now I'm going to put this down here so that we can see everything again. Okay. One thing I forgot to mention last time and I haven't mentioned yet is what end L is. It's short for end line, and it basically tells the machine that this is the end of that line of output, and it basically has an enter key. So basically what it does is it outputs please enter number to evaluate, and then if you were typing that out, it would be the equivalent of you hitting the enter key, and then it goes to the next line, and that's where the little blinky thing here. Run this real quick. Okay, see, it outputs that, and then it does the little thing. And there's the little blinky thing down here. I don't know if you can see it too well, but there's a blinky thing right there. And that's where the number we put will go. Okay, so we've done 10, we've done 2. Let's see. Between there, I think it would be 8. Okay, so let's input 8 real quick. Number is greater than or equal to 5 and less than 10. Okay. So at this point we know all of this logic works. Now let's quickly do compound logic. But before I do that, let's quickly make sure that we understand this here. This is the less than sign, and to add an equals, so if you add an equal like I have down here, it becomes greater than or equal to. For this one it could be less than or equal to. Okay? So less than or equal to 5. Greater than 5. Okay. So now that that's there, just as a word of caution, whatever IDE you're using, save all is right up there, and Control-Shift-S is a pain in the butt for me. I'm not really a keyboard shortcut person, so I just scroll up here and hit save all the time. I know some people that, you know, go to File and do it that way. I have never done that. Also, I don't believe the line numbers show up by default, so let me quickly show you how to make those show up. Let's see, at least I hope I can show you how. I don't remember exactly because it's generally on by default for me because of previous settings. So let me quickly check here in options. Fonts and colors? No, let's see here. Project solution. What about here? Source control text editors. See. Here it is. I think. Maybe it's in C and C++ general. Here it is. Okay, so you go to options, down here to text editor, and then C and C++ general, and right here display line numbers. There you go. I suppose you could turn it on individually for, I guess, really whatever language you want to learn, but there you go. I'm not going to touch anything in there because it's, I like my line numbers, so that's how you get to those in case you didn't notice. Alright, so next up is compound logic statements. So we already have this if-else stuff here. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to combine them, okay? Now, let's see here. Number is less than... Okay, so it's an OR. Okay. Okay, so this is how we do OR. It's the double bar thing. Okay? Now, I've never used that key, or character thing, outside of programming. So I had no idea what it was or where it was on the keyboard until you take a look at it. It's Shift and then the key that's above Enter, at least on a Windows machine. Okay? So that should be where you find it. If it's not there, it should be close to it, or I have absolutely no idea where it is on a Mac. It's probably in the same place, around there. But that's OR. Okay? So... Okay, little thing here about C++ and compound logic statements. Normally, we as humans like to say, okay, if number is less than or equal to 5 or greater than or equal to 10, like that. However, if you can see the red squiggly here, it doesn't compile. Now, for logic with C++, you're going to have to re-specify what you're comparing it to. So you'd have to put num back in there. Now, if number is less than or equal to 5, or number is greater than or equal to 10, it'll output here, number is greater than 5 and less than 10. Okay, so the opposite of this. Less than or equal to 5, or num is greater than or equal to 10. Dot. Okay, so that's that. Now, I'm gonna do, let's see here. Okay, now, you've got the whole less than or equal to thing down by now, I hope. So I'm going to actually get rid of these equals and less than 5 or greater than 10, so that down here, else if, I'm going to show you the other way of doing something similar. Num is greater than 5 and, okay, just like with the OR, which was the double bar, and is double ampersand. In case you didn't know what that sign is, it's called an ampersand. I can't spell it, but I can say it. And it's Shift 7 on Windows, at least. No idea, Mac. Sorry, bub. And num is less than 10. Okay, so then number is greater than 5 and less than 10. Okay, now you might think, unless you were paying attention, that this covers basically every number in the world. Or at least integer. Because remember, we're dealing with ints here. That's whole numbers. However, we haven't accounted for what if the number is actually 5 or actually 10. This only works if it's, less than 5 or greater than 10. This only works if it's greater than 5 and less than 10. So, what about 5 and 10? Well, that's what we have here. Num is... That's my phone, if you heard that. Num is 5 or num is 10. Okay, so if we have our logic correct, this accounts for all integer numbers. That wasn't a true question. I think we got this correct. Okay. Yeah, save all, or just save the one. Both work. Okay, please enter a number to evaluate. Okay, let's hit 1. Num is less than 5, or num is greater than 10. Well, it's less than 5, so we got it correct. Okay. Let's see here. Alright. Now I'm going to show you a bit of nested logic. This is called nested logic, or what you're about to see is called nested logic, really. Okay, so we have all of our little scope things here, but these are all one large if statement. Let's put an additional if statement and put all of those inside it, okay? If num is greater than 0. Okay? Now, my machine will automatically put this here. Didn't actually want it there. So what I'm going to do is do this. Now, this is a formatting shortcut that I love. And it will help you greatly. Control K, Control D, and it spaces it out for you, and then you can just, get rid of the extra space. Alright? And that's Control K, and then let go of both, and then Control D. I believe it's Command on Mac instead of Control. I think the keys are the same, just named differently. If not, sorry, but that's what I remember from other things. Okay, so now if the number is, less than 5 and greater than 0. Okay. Now, why would I do this? Well, I'll show you. Because the next thing we're going to talk about is loops, and I am actually going to omit a certain control structure or logic structure from this, and we'll get to that probably in the next video, so don't worry, this isn't everything. You don't have to do everything with if statements, because trust me, you don't want to. It gets really, really complicated very, very quickly. So right now I'm going to show you guys a quick loop, okay? It's not too complicated. Let's see here. So before I mentioned that you could just throw true right into a Boolean, like an if statement thing. Well, this is why you might want to. You can do something called a while loop, which, sounds kind of like what it is, actually. So, hold on, I messed up a little bit of syntax there. So, while, and then this. Let me quickly put this here. Control K, Control D. Okay. So, while true. Now, never, ever do this unless you have an extremely good reason, because this is called an infinite loop, and there is no good way to get out of it. Well, unless you program a way out of it, which I'm going to do, but first I'm going to show you why it's called an infinite loop. Okay? Now, infinite loops are okay. In fact, you're running an infinite loop right now. It's called your operating system. It has an internal infinite loop in it, and it only goes away when your machine's off. Okay, so that's an infinite loop, and here's why it's called that. Enter a number to evaluate 5. Num is 5, or num is 10. Please enter a number to evaluate. Okay, 6. Greater than 5, less than 10. And it will keep doing this no matter what number I enter. I could exhaust every number on the face of the earth, and I will never get anything to happen. Okay? So 2, num is less than 5. Okay. So now you see why it's an infinite loop. We can't get out. Okay, we have an X button, thank God, but do you really want to hit the X button every time? Especially if you don't have everything properly laid out. You don't want to. Okay, so what we're gonna do is a Boolean value of cont. I'm gonna call it cont loop, okay? I'm going to initialize it to true. Control C. In case you didn't know, I use a few shortcuts, but those are Control C is copy. In case you didn't know. Okay, bool cont loop equals true. Okay, while this. Okay, so I've just started an infinite loop. This is why I put that there. This here. It's for this exact reason. Else, Control V equal false. Okay? Now, if I enter a number that is 0 or less than 0, it will, well, let's just, let's just do this. Because this way, if we want to, we can just hit enter and it will keep 0 in there, and then it will get us out. I think. Unless I didn't clear the buffer, or if I need to clear the buffer for this. I don't know if I have to on something this simple or something. Not. Don't worry about buffer. It's not something you need to worry about right now. We'll get to that eventually, when we cover strings more in depth. Okay. So this is a basic application, and you can do a lot with a structure like this. Okay, enter a number to evaluate 2, 8, and 10, 0, and a key to continue. See? It's an infinite loop that we can break out of easily. Okay? So that's not too bad. That gives us logic and a way to continue until we no longer want to. Alright. And obviously you could do this with any sort of number structure. You could change this from an int to a float to a double. You'd have to change these or you'd get a few warnings, but it'd work just fine. Now, let's quickly go over the rest of loops. So, what other kind of loops are there? Well, I'll tell you. We have seen a while loop. There is also a do while loop, which is pretty simple. Actually, it's almost the exact same thing. You just move. That's not what I wanted to do. Okay. Okay. There we go. Sorry, I have some really weird syntax sometimes. Okay. Now, something to note with a do while loop is after this little bit here, you need to put a semicolon. That's what this thing's yelling me about. Okay? So now, it will do all of this as long as this is true. Now, you should know the subtle difference there. With a while loop, you have the conditional statement at the beginning of the loop. Therefore, if the conditional statement is false at the very beginning, it will not go through the loop at all. Do while guarantees at least one run-through of the loop, because it will do all of this before it checks whether it should do it again. So do while is do this as long as something is true, and a just plain while loop is while this is true, keep doing it. Okay? And you can use whatever you want here. You can even put an expression like this in here, and it would work just fine. Minus the if. It'll evaluate this. This while is essentially the same thing as an if for doing something like that. Okay? So you just copy and paste that, get rid of the if, and extra parentheses aren't necessary either. Alright. So, that's the do while loop, and I don't know why my throat is like that. I apologize. Last kind of loop is a for loop, and those are actually pretty common, and they're mostly used for iterating or looping a specific number of times, or a variable number of times, without having to do a bunch of complex control structures and things like that. However, they are a little bit more complicated to get started. So I'm gonna get rid of this, because we won't need them. I'm not gonna need this. I'm gonna keep that, actually, and you'll see why in a second. Okay, I'm gonna put this back here, and up here. This is how you do a for loop. You start with for, start there. Now, how a for loop works is you have an iterator, then you have the conditional statement, and then usually you have the modifier value for your iterator. So, for this purpose, we're going to do int it, short for iterator, semicolon, it less than 10 iterations, it plus plus. I forgot to initialize it. You want to do that. Make sure you do that part. Int it equals 0, it less than 10, it plus plus. And by the way, plus plus is a C++ thing. Yes, that's a lot of pluses. But basically what plus plus means is that I'm going to add 1 to it. It, whatever you want to call it. So, after doing this once, it comes back up here, and it will change that. Now, the reason I left this here is because I do have access to this number. And yes, you could initialize it to false, in which case it would equal 1. Don't worry about that, though. It's really not incredibly important. I'm going to make it equal 11. This way I get basically the same thing as the loops, but I have a maximum number that it'll go through this. Alright, I can just clean up a little bit of space here. Control K, Control D, get rid of everything. Alright. Now, it will ask me to evaluate a number 10 times before giving up. 5, 6, 3, 2, 8, 4, 7, 9, 5, and I'm done. See? So there's a basic for loop, and there's a lot of uses for these. I use these more often than any other loop. That said, there are several ways of doing a for loop. And you could actually move the plus plus, so let's do that. Plus plus. Now, that's not exactly the same expression, both in how it looks and what it does. It plus plus means it will check the value first. The compiler will read the value first for any logical statements, and then it will increment it. However, doing plus plus it, if you were to put it in a logic statement, it would add 1 to iterator before checking the condition. Not incredibly important for this, but for logic type things, if you were to put this inside a logical thing, then it would matter. So let's do this again, and I'm going to enter 0, and it'll exit, because basically if I hit 0, it sets iterator to 11. Then when it goes back up here, it checks if iterator is less than 10, which it isn't, because I changed the value down here, and it immediately just goes here. Okay? So that's the easy way of getting out of a for loop early, at least a basic for loop like this. Okay, so that gets us some pretty simple logic and various types of loops. This should give you the ability to do at least some form of basic program. Most basic programs are built upon, all programs are essentially built upon these basic concepts. So if I'm going a little slow, it's because you really need to know this before you can move on to anything incredibly complicated. And this is a pretty good thing to know because you're going to use it a lot. Okay. Last video was 40-something minutes, I think. So I'm going to cut this off here. This gets you at least a starting point for coding something of some kind. You could make your own computer troll you forever pretty easily. For example, la-di-dum. Alright, this is gonna be funny-ish. My computer is trolling me. Okay, so there you go. A little funny thing you can make your computer do. Alright, so that gets you some stuff, and we'll cover some more interesting control schemes, and possibly get into a few other things that are helpful and important. So, until next time, see you around.